Going to take a look at a couple of good major leaguers, Ohtani here, and a little later, Mike Trout. Take a look at particularly their hips and how they load the hips and how the hips rotate into the initiation point of the swing, and to see kind of how some major leaguers might do it a little differently, see what they do differently, but also see what they do alike. Here, Ohtani on the first picture, he's in a stance, and in pictures 2, 3, and 4, he's loading. He's taking his stride. He's bringing the bat back and loading his body in preparation of the swing. In picture 5, which the two pictures there with the star, what I would call initiation. It is at this point the front foot has landed, and from there on out, in pictures 5 through 8, the entire rotation is a connected rotation, meaning that the pelvis is rotating, the torso is rotating, the shoulder and bat are all rotating sort of in unison from pictures 5 through 8 at contact. And then in picture 9 is a little bit after contact to see how he looks there. Looking a little closer, these same pictures just blown up, pictures 3, 4, and 5. You can see what he does during his load, and some major leaguers do this, in that he turns his pelvis backwards in picture 3. And then all these pictures, the little purple arrow there, if he had a little arrow pointing out of his belt buckle, you can kind of see the direction that his hips or his pelvis is oriented. And in picture 3, his hips are kind of rotated backwards a bit, actually quite a bit. And if you were the pitcher on the mound, you could probably see his back pocket. He's showing the back pocket of his pants to the pitcher quite a bit in picture 3. As he's coming into the front foot landing in picture 4, the hips are rotating. And then in picture 5, they rotate even more. Again, picture 5 is the point of initiation. So from here on out, everything rotates together. Key here, though, is that the hips here precede the shoulder rotation. Some people call this separation. So the shoulders in here haven't really rotated at all up to this point, yet the hips have. So the hips have been loaded backwards or away from the pitcher during the load, but during as the foot is landing, as he's rotating into foot plant, the hips and the pelvis is going to be aligned with the direction of the pitch. His belt buckle in the picture number 5 is going to be pointed at basically at the photographer in this orientation, and it's that type of location and positioning that will then this batter will use to then proceed to have a linked rotation of all the body parts into contact. So again, this batter does separate and lead the swing with his hips quite a bit. Again, I feel that's because he loads back the hips. And at the point he has link rotation, the belt buckle is pointed directly at the photographer in slide number 5. Looking a little bit past this point in the swing, again, the initiation's on the left now, and then the batter, he comes around and all the way through the contact. Again, looking at the purple arrows, the direction that the pelvis is pointing, if you will, points at the photographer and the far left pitcher, but it continues to rotate throughout the swing all the way up through contact. So it does not stop halfway. It continues on through to contact. I have seen young batters that is not the case. They do not continue the hip rotation into contact. So that's something to look for in a younger batter. Looking at post-contact on the left side, it's pretty much at contact. And after contact, the shoulders continue to rotate. The bat continues to rotate. The bat has been rotated to a very high speed at contact, so that the weight of the bat and the momentum of the bat and the upper body continue after contact. So the shoulders and the bat continue to rotate quite a bit after contact, and in fact, we continue to even after this photograph. Interesting thing, though, is if you take a look at the hips, look at the hips in these two pictures, and you'll see that they really don't rotate from contact to post-contact. So basically, the hips rotate up to contact, but then have little to no rotation after contact. You can kind of see that on the stripe of his leg there. It's kind of in the same position from contact all the way through to quite a bit after contact. Going on to Mr. Trout, he does things a little differently. He does not rotate the hips or the pelvis backwards much at all as he takes his load and stride. You can kind of see in the first three pictures here that the belt buckle, or you can even see the loops on his belt pants there, doesn't really change very much. It's kind of stationary. His hips are in line with the direction of the pitch. His belt buckle points basically at the photographer at all those three pictures. So and his shoulders are also very stationary. So he kind of loads back and he just moves forward into foot plant. And as his foot is planting in the last two photographs, his entire torso rotates together. So he doesn't really precede the hip rotation. The pelvis does not really precede the shoulder rotation much at all. It kind of comes down as sort of a block and rotates. And that's, I believe, because he does not counter-rotate his pelvis during the load. Key here is, though, in the third picture with the star, the initiation picture, what you see here is that his belt buckle is pointing again at the photographer. The same thing we saw with the previous batter. Even though he took a large inward turn of the pelvis, he started to rotate the entire torso at the exact same location that Trout does here. And that being when the pelvis is aligned with the pitch direction, or when the belt buckle is pointed straight at the photographer. It's at that point for both batters that the entire torso, arms, and then bat start to rotate together. Likewise, looking at Trout as he goes from initiation in the left side into contact, the belt buckle points directly at you in the left picture, but it continues to rotate and rotate all the way through to contact. After contact, the bat is obviously rotating considerably after contact, as are the shoulders. But take a look at the back leg again, the stripe on the back leg. You can see there that the pelvis and the lower half has basically done its rotation by contact. After contact, there's very little change. They almost look like the same picture there, except for the bat. So again, the pelvis, the bottom half rotates up through contact, but basically that's about all. So in conclusions, some observations. Some batters, they turn their pelvis quite a bit inwardly during the load, as we saw with Ohtani. Some do it a little bit, some do it quite a bit. Other batters don't really inwardly turn the pelvis much at all, as we saw with Trout, and there are other batters that do it both ways. Having said that, they do have some common features that we just talked about. And that the key, I think, is that the rotation of the torso, the connected rotation of the trunk and the arms and the bat, the pelvis, occur at the point when the pelvis is pointed at the pitcher. As we saw, or if you look at the way the belt buckle was pointing directly straight out toward the home plate or toward the photographer in the pictures that we looked at. So no matter how much separation or non-separation that a batter might exhibit with having the pelvis preceding the rotation of the shoulders, at the point when that pelvis is in this position, the entire trunk should be in connected rotation all the way through to contact. And finally, the pelvis should rotate up through to contact, the torso up to contact, but after contact, not very much. Basically, the lower half should not be rotating very much after contact. Upper half, yes, certainly the shoulders and the bat continue to rotate, but you don't see a whole lot of rotation of the lower half after contact.